Jason Aponte on Niners Nation has a pretty good article, and one that I think is interesting. And he's asking the question: is there any chance that Ji'Ayir Brown can beat out Tayshaun Gibson for that starting free safety role opposite Talanoa Hufanga? Gibson was really good last year. He was fantastic. I mean, he signed a 1-year deal for $2.9 million, $2.1 million guaranteed. Gibson did, and he's been, he's a productive interceptor. He's a great center fielder. Ball hawk, who's going to take the ball away from you. He had 5 interceptions, 8 pass breakups, 61 tackles. The guy's got like 35 career interceptions. So he's kind of a proven ball hawk in center field. But I think get the feeling that Ji'Ayir Brown's probably a little bit better all-around player, than Gibson. What do you think? Is Gibson going to be the starter at free safety, or is it possible that Ji'Ayir Brown, on the strength of his overall game, takes that job away from him going into the season?
It all just depends about how they feel about it financially. I really think Ji'Ayir Brown, when I look at him, Larry, I do believe he's capable of having the kind of offseason that vaults himself into a starting caliber role or a high role on this defense, where he's playing a lot of snaps as a third safety. He adds versatility in the slot. He's a good blitzer. He can really play anywhere in the secondary besides really outside corner. So I do think that he's going to play quite a few snaps. Whether they covet, the $1.3 million of dead cap that includes the post-June 1st cut, because they're not going to be able to trade Tayshaun Gibson. That's very unlikely. So whether they would rather have the $730,000 of savings, or whether they would just rather have Tayshaun Gibson, a very steady presence. They can put him back there. He'll do his job. He won't make mistakes. He'll be at the right spot at the right time, and he finds ways to take the football away on errant throws in the back end. It's really going to come down to their trust in the entire situation. But in terms of the capability of Ji'Ayir Brown to beat out Tayshaun Gibson from just a pure upside standpoint, I think that's definitely possible. It's just that the Niners might still elect to want to have that steady veteran presence and have Ji'Ayir Brown play a lot of snaps, but not put the starting pressure on him, especially if they have to start somewhat of a young secondary. With Hufanga, he had quite a few blunders over the course of the season last year. He also had a lot of big plays. There was why he was first team All-Pro, but he had quite a few blunders, and it would put a lot of pressure on Ji'Ayir Brown to play center field a lot as a rookie if they play single high, because they don't seem to really like putting Hufanga there. So therefore, I think just keeping Gibson back there probably is steady, and it just comes down to the money to me, really. If they want that $730,000 so bad, they might go with that. But I think it won't be a problem for Brown. I think Brown will be right there by the end of the offseason.
I think Gibson's going to keep the job just because the single high safety and a cover 3 look is your last line of defense. And I just think they're going to play it more conservatively. I think they'll want their last line of defense to be a veteran who's been there, seen it, done it. Let's just say this. If Ji'Ayir Brown takes Gibson's job, it will be because it was so glaringly obvious to every person in the stadium, from the guy in the last seat in the upper deck, that Brown was like spectacular and had to be the starter. It won't be because, you know what, Brown's a 7 and Gibson's a 6, and no. It will have to be like Brown's like, Brown looks like a Pro Bowler
on the field. They can't keep him off of it, right?
Exactly.
I agree. Even if Brown's excellent, where they look at Brown and say he could start, I think they would just say have him play a lot of snaps as a rookie in a lot of different roles and just keep Gibson, because he's really not that expensive and he's pretty good.
I agree. All right, how about this one? We got a chance last week during the rookie minicamp to talk to Steve Wilks. And Wilks comes in. He's coached all over the place, and he's coached different schemes. Heck, when he was in college, he's coaching like a 3-3-5 defense. He's had a bunch of different looks. How much different is the Niner defense going to look with Wilks? Will we be able to see a discernible difference between what Saleh did as the coordinator, what D'Amico did as the coordinator, and what Wilks is going to do? And if so, what will be the differences?
For sure, I think it's going to look structurally like the same exact defense on first and second down. I think third down is where maybe you see a distinction. Um, but even on third down, I think that they probably will pressure maybe a little bit more. Maybe they'll be more aggressive in terms of playing man to man coverage. But man, I could see Wilks also just doing a similar thing where you have a lot of sim pressure, similar to what D'Amico and where Saleh was doing in 2020, and then you had what D'Amico was doing the last 2 years. And here's why. I feel like I was the only one saying this before they hired a coordinator and all of that. So not to pat myself on the back, but I told you that structurally they were going to try to keep the same defense and make the coordinator adjust to it. It's because they believe so much in the players, and look at how well the players play within this scheme. Look at how fast Fred Warner plays. Look at how fast Nick Bosa plays. It's because they don't change their role a lot in their defense. They don't have them think a lot. They have them do the same exact things, and those players are so exceptional, both with how they are cognitively, but also how tangible or how many tangible gifts they have physically that they do such a good job. So I can't see Wilks coming in here and now all of a sudden we have multiple fronts and we have the Niners giving you the 3-3-5 looks, and we have the Niners defense now with all these exotic blitzes, and they're running zero pressures out of everywhere. They're looking like the New England Patriots. No, I don't see that happening. You might see a couple of variations of different blitzes on third downs. You might maybe see a little bit more aggressive man-to-man coverage, but I think it's going to mostly stay the same because if it ain't broke, why fix it? They have amazing personnel, and this scheme is built to just play to the personnel. Why would they come in here and complicate it now after they just paid, 4 years, $80 million for one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL, who plays best when you just tell him, hey, get upfield and get the quarterback? Why would you be like, all right, now we're going to come in, we're going to play this 3-4 cover 6 Fangio look, and we're going to have Javon Hargrave come in and two-gap here? That doesn't make sense to me. So structurally, I think it's going to remain almost the same in a lot of ways, maybe a couple of different wrinkles. But honestly, Larry, I think by the end of the season, I think the average person who very casually watches the Niners every Sunday here and there, who doesn't know the basics, they won't say that, wow, the Niners defense looks so different now. But I do think there will be a couple of nuanced things there that are slightly different because coach to coach, they might play cover 3 a different way. They might rotate to quarters a different way. And those are different things that I think coach to coach, there are subtle nuances and details that are different.
I think that the front is going to be the same. I think that's why, Kocurek is there. He orchestrates the games up front. I think the fronts are going to be the same. You may see some dogs, you may see some linebacker blitzes, and I think you may see them mix it up on the back end where you've got a cloud on this side and you got man-to-man on this side, and they're going to, you know what I mean? I could see because Steve's expertise is on the back end, and Luter is like a great press man corner. And when I asked him about it, he's like, yeah, I played press man. Even when we were playing zone on the other side, I'm playing press man on my side. And
Larry, can I ask you this though? Because I've heard this being said a lot.
Yeah.
I've heard this being said a lot, and I mean this with all due respect to one Daryl Luther, who I'm yet to watch. So I have no clue how good of a player he is or isn't.
Yeah.
But how many 5th-round corners do you know that walk into the NFL and teams go, hey, that's the guy that we're going to have play press man one-on-one. You're the guy. That corner, if you're a corner that walks into the NFL and teams are like, you're a press man guy, we're going to have you play press man 90% of the time. Usually you're picked in the top 30, 40 picks in the draft because you're a one-of-one guy physically, right? You're a Revis. You're a
Dion.
Right,
totally.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I mean, I've seen coaches on the field go through all the different coaching points in playing off coverage, playing press man up on the line, playing zone coverage in different kinds of zones. And there's so many different coaching points that sometimes you have coaches that want to play to what they view as the strengths of their players. And if Luter has played so much press man and he likes to get up on the line of scrimmage and get his hands on a guy, it's a totally different world than playing man to man, but you're playing off. Because
Yeah,
off, you have to
true.
absorb that player, and your timing has to be right, and your
Right.
footwork has to be right. So I don't know. I mean, this is the one thing. Like if Steve were sitting here with us, Vish, I would say to him, let's talk a little bit about your philosophy on coverage. And do you like to have every guy doing everything, or are you cognizant of this guy likes this guy's better at that? Because man, I've seen guys, especially if they're up on the line of scrimmage and they like to get their hands on you and physically play bump and run. It's a totally different deal than playing off coverage and absorbing that cushion seamlessly and then settling into your man-to-man. So I don't know. I mean, I'd love to hear his philosophy on, yeah, you know what?
100%.
I've had guys who just can't play off coverage.
Do you think they're going to play press more in general? Because, I mean, Mooney Ward, when they signed him, I think a lot of us felt that it was trending that way because that's what he did best in Kansas City. Now, he had a couple of games where he got absolutely burned for doing it, but that's what happens when you have to play press man that many snaps against Jamar Chase. Sometimes he puts 9 for, what did he give him? 10 for 217 and 3 touchdowns. He put that on his head. Gave him something kind of nasty like that. So maybe it's there. And do you think maybe now there's a resurgence of Ambry Thomas, whose entire game was playing press man at Michigan?
And Womack. Don't forget Womack.
True.
You know, so I you know what? That's the one mystery. And you know what? We're not going to really know. We're not going to know in camp. We're not going to know in the preseason. We're not really going to know until we get a month into the season and we can see 3, 4, 5 games and see them match up against different types of offenses, different types of receivers, and see what Steve likes. But I will say this, you know, the old saying in football is if you match up, you play man. If you don't match up physically, you play zone. The Niners have played predominantly zone, but they've also invested a lot of their money up front on their defensive line.
Right.
And maybe they've played zone because they don't feel like they match up. Now you add a Ji'Ayir Brown. Now you add a Darrell Luter Jr. Now you add Womack, and you've got some guys who maybe are more comfortable in man. I just think that if you have guys who can play man, you have flexibility to do what you want.
I agree, but here's why I think actually playing zone is better for the Niners. Their best quality in pass coverage,
taking the ball away.
Their best player in pass coverage is their middle linebacker. He takes the middle of the field away. And he does it because he's able to gather depth, but he's so fast and so quick at triggering that he's also able to take away routes in front of him. It's almost like he has eyes in the back of his head, but then he also has the speed to carry routes that, you know, come across his face, that he has to carry vertically. Fred Warner is the most special coverage, one of the most special coverage linebackers I think we've ever seen in the history of football. And I think that's where, when you play that much zone, they're able to just eliminate the middle of the field and allow their secondary to play very confidently and play off coverage and trigger quickly because their linebacker takes away so much. I do have one question for you, though, on the secondary.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned this. Do you think that they, based on what you've seen so far this offseason in terms of your interactions at the facility with Shanahan and all of that, you think they view Sam Womack as an outside corner? Or
I do.
Okay.
But I also know that Sam can play the slot. He can play inside.
Right.
But I think Samuel Womack is going to be one of the revelations of camp, because if you look at his film from last year, there were a number of times where he broke really well on the football and got his hands on it and dropped it or just tipped it. This year, I think he'll play a step or two faster, and I expect his interception production to go way, way up, and I expect him to get a couple pick sixes this year.
Yeah, and he has, I mean, the only thing he doesn't have in terms of playing outside is just the height, right? He has the length of an outside corner, and he has the speed of an outside corner, so it makes sense why they would want him to play outside too. He's certainly got the attributes.